You came to Canada in 1975 as an immigrant from India. What was the dream that you had when you initially came here? And can you share a little bit about that journey to where you are today as the Chief Information Officer at Cargojet, the only woman of color on the board of directors at Ontario Health, and so many other things that you're doing out there?
So going back to 1975, I came here as a young bride. I had married my husband, who had lived in Canada for the previous 2 years. And you know what my dream was and what reality today is like worlds apart. My husband was at the time was studying to be a CA, the equivalent of the CA in 1975. And I just expected to have a great life in a foreign land, and I was looking forward to being in North America. And believe me, when I got here in April 1975, so this next month it would make it 46 years of my life here. I'm doing the math already. 20 years of my life in India. I mean, I was 20 when I came. I was just recently sharing this conversation with my children. I remember in April it was very cold, extremely cold when I arrived. In those days there used to be mountains of snow piled up, and my husband would drop me off at a street. He would pick certain locations. He would drop me off to apply for jobs. I would walk through the snow, freezing, saying, oh, is this what I signed up for when I said, oh, I want to go to Canada? Applying for jobs at factories. I don't remember what street that was, but there was a Wrigley factory. I guess I don't know what I was going to apply for because I don't know what happens. But the interesting at that time was they were all looking for Canadian experience. And here I am, a 20-year-old, coming here from India. I speak English. What experience do I have? And they would ask me, do you have experience? And I would say, oh yeah, all my life in India, I've been wrapping bubble gum, right? So those were challenging times. You know, my first job was as an office Friday person for a man who had a rust proofing shop where he rust proofed exotic cars. I don't think you need to do them anymore. I got paid $125 a week. That was 46 years ago. So yeah, that's where my journey started. You know, it's been an amazing journey. It has had its challenges, its ups and downs, but I think the resilience that I learned from my family and, you know, that I learned from myself, because there's only two ways you can go, up or down, right? And I wasn't going to go down.
Yeah, that's so inspiring because, you know, a lot of immigrants come here for that dream, that better, brighter future. You came here and you saw those piles of snow, walking out there in the cold, going for these jobs in factories. How does it make you feel? And then, like, you know, how do you keep going and persevere and build that resilience?
So I grew up in a very hardworking family. My mom was a teacher. She is a teacher. She's 98 years old in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And she came from a family that worked very hard and that believed in education. And here's a story that I like to share from Hindu mythology. So I'm going to share that with the audience because, you know, even to this day, it appeals to me. And it starts with, you know, there's this young man who wants to become rich and famous. He doesn't know how to do that. So he goes to his guru, his teachers, and he says, I want to become rich and famous. What do I do? So they say to him that inside every human being, there's two goddesses who live inside them. One is now these are the traditional Indian names for the goddesses. One is the goddess of wealth. Her name is Lakshmi. And one is the goddess of education and wisdom. Her name is Saraswati. Now, these two siblings have the perfect sibling rivalry. So if you want to become rich, you have to follow Saraswati, who is the goddess of knowledge and wisdom. So my family's goal was that you had to be educated. Perseverance comes through education. And that's why I support efforts for women in education.
Thank you for sharing that beautiful story. So, you know, when you initially came here to Canada, it was with the intention to study or to work, or what did you have in mind?
It was not with the intention to study. when I came here, I already had a bachelor's degree from University of Delhi. I also had a bachelor's of education from University of Delhi. And in India, this education system was different. I graduated high school at 16, 3 years of undergrad. At 19, I had a BSc. At almost 20, I had a bachelor's in education. And I was actually teaching in a school for, in those days, for mentally handicapped children, right? Which was very challenging. So when I came here, I didn't have a vision of going back to school or anything like that. I think there was no internet. I was pretty naive about life over here. I just thought everybody just had the North American dream, and they lived in beautiful homes, and somehow the money came. It grew on trees, right? So no, I didn't have any aspirations then. My aspirations came later as I found the challenges of married life in a new city where I had no support systems.
Can you share a little bit about that? Yeah, you said, so you got your aspirations later on in life.
Yes. So my marriage was challenging. We won't go into the details of that, but I realized very quickly that I had to be financially independent. If I wanted the dream life that I was going to create of, sitting back and enjoying myself and living this beautiful life, I had to do it myself. I couldn't rely on anybody else to do it. So I started to look for jobs that paid well. And the only jobs that paid well were in the computer programming industry. So I went and took night courses in computer programming. So that was the point where my whole life direction changed. Because now I was financially independent. Where I had started my journey, and my journey would not end because technology keeps evolving. So I went back to school, and and then I never looked back. Independence that comes with education was the way for me.
And you had both your kids when you went back to school.
So I continued to keep my education going. When my daughter was, I think, 7, I took her to my MBA graduation, which was in New York City, because by then I had moved to New York for a while with my husband. And I took her to my graduation, and that was amazing.
Yeah.
For my daughter to see her mother, graduating with, and it was an executive MBA program. So it wasn't like, everybody was young. But when I look at, she was 7 years old, I was pretty young, probably in my mid-30s by then, and, or early 30s. I can't count backwards that far. Besides the formal degrees and in education, technology, and I think life in general, you have to be a lifelong learner. So whenever new technologies came along, I would think about, does this fit into my career portfolio? Is this going to take me to the next level? If it did, I didn't wait for an employer to pay for my education. I invested in myself. I did the same thing when it came to, and this is where it's going to lead me into my board career. More than 10 years ago, I was at a conference for Cargojet in Europe. And this was an IATA conference, so it was travel related. There was a gentleman from Canada who came and he spoke about governance. And he was about to launch an educational program for people to become directors on public companies and not-for-profits and things like that. And I became so involved in it that I joined the program. I think I was in the first graduating cohort of the Directors College at McMaster University. I'm really proud to say that I'm actually sitting in my graduating chair, and it wasn't by design today. If you look here, it says the Directors College. The back of it has my name embroidered. I'll give you a glimpse of that later during the interview.
What interested you about the board work?
I think it was the fact that there was oversight. There was oversight of, and 15 years ago, it wasn't like, we were worrying about issues like cybersecurity or risk of technology. It was, I think to me, the interest was more like, this is the old boys club. So, wouldn't it be nice to be part of that? And when you looked at the board members 15 years ago, there was mostly white men. women on these boards. Apparently, there still are a lot of that. But I also wanted, I think further than most people my age at that time. I was actually looking to see what would I do when I retire, and that was not something that was on my agenda at all 15 years ago. But it was something that I could broaden my horizons with. And I made wonderful connections because this course was held at Niagara on the Lake on the weekends. And the people who came to do these courses were mostly C-level people, CFOs, lawyers, legal people. And it was really wonderful to be exposed to so many people. So it wasn't just the designation of the charter director, it was also the connections that you made.